Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm looking forward to today's show. Thank you for listening to Soul Talk. And we have on the line Dr. Amit Goswami, who I'm sure most of you listening are aware of who Dr. Goswami is and what his work is and, how he has affected the world. He's been in the movie What the Bleep Do We Know, and he has a new movie that came out about a year ago called The Quantum Activist that came out with his book. It was about 2 years ago now at this point. And good afternoon, Dr. Goswami. How are you?
Good afternoon, Jeremy. I'm fine, and you?
I'm doing wonderful. It was sunny out this morning here in Florida. Now it's starting to get overcast, but that's still a good thing. I enjoy the rain as well. So.
Better than Oregon, believe me. I'm sitting in Eugene with a rather cloudy sky and rain.
Oh yeah, one of these times I'm going to make it up to the Oregon area. I went as close as Coeur d'Alene this summer, but that was as far as I got. Well, so I just wanted to kind of ask you a couple of questions before we get started in our interview. I know we got several people listening today. One is, and I'm really fascinated by the work that you do, and one of them is the last book I read of yours is The Quantum Activist. And could you explain to the listeners what the Quantum Activist is and what that entails?
There are two aspects of it. One is a more traditional one, which is that, Newtonian physics was upended by quantum physics in the beginning of the 20th century. By 1925-26, we had a theory which has survived all these experimental tests over decades, and we had already experimental data, verifying experimental data in 1926. And admittedly, quantum physics presents some very difficult to understand aspects of reality that was unfamiliar in the Western academia. But they're not so unfamiliar in the overall Western worldview because they remind us of the importance of spiritual traditions and their teachings. So quantum physics was reestablishing this reconnection with messages of other cultural aspects, cultural streams in our society. I mean, it is undeniably the spiritual traditions have a stream, and that remains today. As you know, America right now is polarized between material and spiritual. So, but scientists are kind of reluctant to accept spirituality back in the thing. And so controversies grew, and as a result, the public never was told that, at least in physics, how we do physics today, we never doubt quantum physics. We never doubt. We completely accept that quantum physics is true and only physics that is there. It is never going to be supplanted by something else. And in spite of it, the implications of quantum worldview are ignored by scientists in general, and therefore public also, especially the media, completely accepts the Newtonian worldview formulated 400 years ago, no longer valid, completely obsolete in view of quantum physics. So part of quantum activism is just to remind people that the worldview has to be changed. The paradigm has shifted already in physics from Newtonian to quantum physics, and the implications are grave. For example, I'll tell you one implication that right away will make it a very interesting debate, which is that in the classical worldview, Newtonian worldview, there is only the space-time, only one level of reality. Whereas in the quantum worldview, from the get-go, we say that quantum physics depicts objects as possibility, which must be recognized to belong to a transcendent world of potentia, and that transcends the immanent world of actuality. So immediately we get a two-level reality, which psychologists have discovered, unconscious and conscious they call it, and spiritual traditions have been talking about it for millennia, transcendent and immanent. That's their version. We just have a new version of it, potentia and actuality, potentia and manifestation. But, it's undeniably a very exciting view because it has integrative potential. It can integrate the two streams of our culture, namely spirituality and materiality. So that's part of it.
Yeah, and so just hearing you talk is that one of the interesting things that physics itself really just deals with this materialistic science that I know you talk about, this materialistic world that we see with our eyes. But quantum physics goes beyond that.
Right. This is the problem, of course, because quantum physics goes beyond it, and we never see this world of possibility. We never see this transcendent world. Nevertheless, we have effects from it. Everybody knows that our unconscious affects what happens in our conscious. Similarly, in quantum physics, we take it for granted that, of course, what is in potentia affects what is going to manifest. So there's undeniably it's a two-level reality that needs to be recognized in our thinking, in our actions. So that's what a quantum activist does. Quantum activist lives quantum physics, turns into thinking in the quantum way, namely take the unconscious into account in the thinking process. And that has grave repercussions about enhancement of creativity. And similarly, there are other principles that come in, which we'll talk about as we progress. And these other implications, if you put them into application in your life, transformation can happen. Happiness can happen. The world really changes for us, and how we view the world changes ourselves in such a way that it's very satisfying. And we are missing it. So quantum activism brings people into that. And also, finally, the change of society. We can use the same quantum principles to reunite the two streams of our culture, depolarization, and integrate them back into one coherent way of thinking.
Well, years ago, my biggest shift was when I watched, probably the first thing I saw you in was What the Bleep Do We Know? And I had to watch that movie probably 100 times before something clicked in my head, because I got it, but it just was so much for my mind to grasp, because I was so just used to everything that I saw. And then when I watched you and the other people in that, and the scientists and the people speaking in there, I was like, wait a minute, that's what? But it has taken me many times of getting quiet and still to realize that the real world wasn't necessarily happening right in front of me. It's many, many different levels and many different aspects. And I'm only focused on this, and I'm missing out, as they're saying, on a tremendous amount, but there's a lot of people out there that are missing. And we want to call it mystical, but I think it's more, we bring science and mysticism together. I think we're really bringing something to the forefront.
Absolutely. So, this is the biggest open secret right now, that mysticism is no longer mystic. We don't have a mist about mysticism anymore. We have resolved all the mist, and it's all very clear how it happens and how it is true and how it can be experimentally verified and has been verified. So, people, there is nothing to worry about mysticism, that it will take you to ooh-la-la land. It's nothing like that. It's very much a part of ourselves. We are built in that way. And if we delve into those directions, we can get into a very satisfactory way of living.
Yeah. So how does one start to transmute or transfigure themselves into the quantum activist, or I've even said at times, right, I think I've heard you say the observer, and start changing their life?
Yeah, so we have to go a little bit beyond ourselves, and how to do it are the quantum principles at the basis of it. So I'll tell you about the most astounding principle. Most astounding principle is quantum non-locality. Previously, we thought that the only way two things can interact is the exchange of signal. And therefore, we thought that something that is non-material cannot interact possibly with something material. So this excluded, in the mind of scientists anyway, or all people who are used to thinking in the scientific way, this excluded the existence of mind separate from matter. And if mind is just an emanation of matter, then of course mind is limited. So the whole idea of free will, which is a property of mind's independence, becomes very muddled, people started believing less and less in free will. So the belief grew that we are behavioral beings completely determined by our evolutionary and psychosocial conditioning. And this led to a greatly limited view of ourselves, where we don't trust ourselves anymore. We are confused as regards meaning and values that we explore. And, we never quite believe that we are machines, we are mechanical completely, but we are confused. Whenever it comes to value questions especially, we hesitate. Is these values real? Or am I just fooling myself? So why should I make a sacrifice for my fellow human being? Because the values may not be real. So this kind of confusion, this value confusion, is of course a major consequence of which is this economic breakdown, etc. Nobody follows ethics anymore, business people especially, but they cannot be singled out. We are ourselves. The consumers also are equally confused. So, what is the way out of this dilemma? The way out, of course, is to realize that there is not just communication with signals, but there is also communications without signal, and this is what quantum physics is telling us squarely since 1935, when a theoretical paper was published saying that quantum physics implies that there could be potentially communication between objects without signals. This was called quantum non-locality, communication between objects without signals. And then this was verified in 1982. And in 1993, 94, this was verified for two brains, where electrical activity from one brain was transferred into another brain without any electrical connection. Can you believe it? But this experiment by a neurophysiologist named Jacobo Greenberg at the University of Mexico really should have turned the world of physics and world of science and world in general upside down, but it didn't, because generally speaking, the credibility of scientists, they just was too prejudiced against such finding. But this experiment has now been replicated by some 24 independent experiments in different laboratories across the world. So no longer can we doubt that this non-locality is real, signal-less communication. So again, then mind can very well be independent of matter, and then we get back free will. We get back free will anyway from quantum physics. That's another story. That's my major work contribution to the field, that quantum physics implies that there is freedom. There is freedom to choose, and to choose from quantum possibilities, that it defines us. But it defines us not as the conditioned ego, not as the conditioned machine self, but it defines us as a free self. I really choose, and therefore I am. So in this way, we are reviving the human being in all his or her glory, namely that, yes, he or she can think independent of the body, he or she can feel, they can intuit, and they can choose what they do with the world.
Yeah. So basically, what the human consciousness is right now, a lot of people, or where we're looking at, the non-quantum activist is the one that looks at themselves as a speck within the universe, and so that they look at their free will as just this egoic free will, that they make choices based on what they see. But if they go to the quantum level, their true free will, their quantum free will, they're making free will choices based on a quantum level. Am I understanding that?
Right, and the implication is huge. Because in the ego level, if it is all choices are at the immanent level, then you can choose only between alternatives that's already etched in your brain. So your choice is limited to your past conditioning. So you're always choosing a juxtaposition, combinations, permutations of what you have chosen before. But in the quantum way, you are choosing completely new. And this is what innovation and creativity is about. Why do we complain so much today because of lack of innovation? Why? Because we have lost that capacity. We are not doing quantum thinking. People are not processing their unconscious properly. People don't believe. Some people, in spite of 100 years of psychiatry, people don't believe in the unconscious, really. And therefore, we get misguided. We don't believe in the full force of creativity, and we shortchange our creative ability.
That leads me to another question, because I saw, and I don't know who said it, but they said that the body is 90% unconscious and 10% conscious. So is the 90% conscious, or the 90% unconscious, the quantum that we're missing?
Well, part of it is still the conditioned stuff. They don't go away. So even the unconscious, initially, if we don't work at it, consists of those things that are residue from the conscious. In other words, you can see it in your dreams. There are many day residue dreams. Dreams just act out what happened during the day in the waking hours. So there is a tendency for the unconscious also to be loaded with only those aspects that we leave in the conscious. But beyond that, if we learn how to rebuild the unconscious, refigure, you were talking about refigure the unconscious, this is the challenge. Then the unconscious also consists of infinite new possibilities. And but we have to learn that trick of how to do it, how to prime the unconscious to contain, to process the new. It's not an easy thing. This is the other warning that I must give the listener, because today, if you listen to people who are quantum practitioners but who had only a little learning about this, they misrepresent immediately and make it too simple. Like, I create my own reality. That's a very common phrase we use. But then we think that I can create my own reality with just sitting and thinking about it, with the existing repertoire etched in my brain already. No, it's not that simple. We really have to learn how to do the unconscious processing so that it starts processing the new. Then only I can discover and explore the new potential that I have.
It's funny you should say that. Just before, about 10 minutes before we started the show, I saw on Facebook somebody mentioned that they said you can't just sit in a dark room and say, I know electricity makes light. I know electricity makes light, and expect the lights to come on. You actually have to do the work to get up and turn the light on. And I thought that I was like, wow, that's very true. You got to do the work to understand yourself.
Got to do the work.
So we actually have a caller, Dr. Goswami, so I'm going to bring them on if you don't mind.
Sure.
And, hello,
Hi,
caller
Jeremy.
from an 859 area code. How are you?
Hi,
Virginia?
this is Virginia.
Hi, Virginia.
Listen, I am so excited on your guest today. I really did enjoy your conversation on what the bleep, because I'd had a near-death experience, and when I saw that and I heard your explanation, I cried, because it made me realize that I had really experienced what I experienced. And I am a practitioner of quantum, and I love it when the room melts and you get into a quantum wave. That is probably the coolest, because I did teach physics. Now I taught physics on a 6th grade level. So I want to thank you for being a rogue and telling your truth.
I want to congratulate you for having a near-death experience. You directly verified that the unconscious is important to us. Unconscious does process new possibilities, and you manifested some of them while you were, quote-unquote, dead. And after you woke up from your dead state, when you see that things happened while you were dead, then there is no doubt that you don't live just in this immanent reality. You transcend it also. So congratulations. You had a direct verification.
Thank you very much, because I'm telling you, that movie, because nobody would understand what I would say, because when you cross over like that or go have an out-of-body experience, there's not even words to express what has happened. And I learned quantum physics while I was there. So, I mean, it's because you're experiencing quantum. You can think it and you be there. And when you experience it, then therefore you know it. So yes. I thank you so much for speaking for the science communities and just been putting the truth out. That's more important than anything. And I will get off so you can keep on talking, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Virginia.
Bye.
And Dr. Goswami, she actually had, I know Virginia, she had 4 near-death experiences in her life.
Oh,
she had
wow.
one as she had one as a child, one as a teenager, one later on in life, and then she had a heart attack in her 40s, and that's where she had the profound experience in her 40s. So, very,
right.
very interesting stuff.
Yes.
So, and I think that's a good explanation. When they have that near-death experience, are they? I know that they're having this experience, and I've had something similar with out-of-body experiences, and what Dr. Moody would refer to as a shared death experience with a family member. Are we when we go out? Are we separating ourselves from our ego and experiencing the quantum level?
Yes, but there is a little caveat. I mean, the explanation that makes sense is that
Right.
we are not experiencing, but we are processing in the unconscious. There is no experience in the unconscious. But when we come back, if we are revived, then what happens at the moment of revival, immediately the whole chain of the unconscious processing that we did, the particular chain that we choose, that chain becomes retroactively manifest. And therefore, what we remember is really literally memory of what I did. But it's a little subtle. Did I actually do it concomitantly when I was dead? Physics says that no, that is impossible. When you are dead, you cannot manifest anything. You cannot change possibility into actuality. But that doesn't mean that you did not process. You did process. And the processing, the proof of the processing is in the pudding, that when you woke up, you remembered some of what you processed, the particular chain that you chose to collapse, chose to manifest. So it's a beautiful, beautiful proof that unconscious processing is real. Creativity is another way of beautifully proving it. Neurosis is another way of proving it. Freud pointed out a long time ago that neurosis suggests that there is unconscious processing. In the unconscious, stuff goes on which don't quite make sense, so we suppress them, or trauma that pains us, so we suppress them. But they are in the unconscious, they go on, and they affect what is conscious. Suddenly, I feel the urge to wash my hands. Doesn't make sense. But it makes sense if I realize that there are suppressed stuff in my unconscious, that processing those gives me the urge of cleaning myself all the time. I feel guilt about something or something like that.
Well, so the quantum activists, and I keep on going back, and I want to ask this question because, in spirituality, I was raised very Christian, but I don't necessarily think that Christian is what it is today. I think that it was, one of the things that Jesus taught us that, that the kingdom of heaven was within us, and maybe he was talking about he was going into the unconscious and opening up the unconscious, and that with, when 2 or more gather in my name, meaning, then we can change the earth. And
yeah,
he's
that's
talking
non-locality
about
for you, right?
So he's really talking about becoming.
Jesus' Christianity is very different from the Christianity that fundamentalists today or Republicans today or people like Rush Limbaugh, they preach. It's a very, very different beast. Jesus' quantum Christianity is very quantum. Even in a standard gospel in Luke, Jesus says that if you think consciousness is in the sky, then the birds would have known it before us. If you think that it's in the water, then the fish would precede us in knowledge of consciousness. But that's not the case. So consciousness is neither here nor there. It's at once within you and outside you. That later quote, of course, does not occur in the usual Gospels, but only in the Gospel of according to Thomas. But it's part of the Gospel. So Jesus said such things. Gospel according to Thomas is probably the most authentic of Jesus' sayings. It's in the Nag Hammadi library, so it's actually more authentic than the traditional Gospels. So, I have quoted. I wrote a book called God is Not Dead, in which I had an epilogue, appendix, Quantum Physics and the Teachings of Jesus. It will throw you, because time after time, Jesus made statements which are just completely quantum physics. It's absolutely incredible how this man, 2,000 years ago, could speak such a language.
Yeah. Well, him and the Buddha and many other enlightened, that's interesting that we talk about that, because we look at our science as the revolutionary of our what was happening in our world, but these people were actually experiencing things on a quantum level, and that's the only way.
That's right. Exactly. Just like Virginia realized that she's experiencing quantum physics. And these people were expressing the same thing because they realized it intuitively and wrote about it with such wonderful intelligence. That's the part that I get agitated about. There's such intelligence. Of course, they used parables and stories sometimes very mysterious words, but it leaves no doubt. Just a little analysis shows that they knew what they're talking about.
Yeah. So basically, we can change this. We can change ourselves. We can start by changing ourselves and changing our thought process, in living in balance or in the now of the moment, as some spiritual texts would talk about.
Right. Changing the thought process. That's the crucial thing. We bring from classical thinking, one level thinking, to quantum thinking. Quantum thinking consists of two parts: do, the actual thinking, and be, not thinking. So it's a combination of thinking and not thinking that is better thinking than thinking alone.
Yeah, or what is it? Some people call it the TikTok mind. And
right.
There's a quote in here actually that on your website that I like that says, "So let's walk our talk and make brain circuits of positive emotions. We just do it. We practice. Let some of us be good, do good, be the God some of the time, and be the ego some of the time, and let the dance generate creative acts of transformation. With this resolution, with this objective in mind, I invite you to become a quantum activist." And I saw a speech, I believe you said that a speech on your movie, The Quantum Activist, that you were giving, or I saw it on YouTube, I can't remember. It's a while ago. And it really struck me because I've always felt that some people want to just eliminate the ego and forget that we are human, but we're also quantum at the same time.
Yeah, that's the other side, flip side of the coin. The scientists emphasize the ego and forget about the quantum side, and then the spiritual people, they try to undermine the ego and kill the ego. That's one of the spiritual messages sometimes. It's very misguided because, yes, at the last stage of spiritual development, there is such a stage where we shift the identity from the ego to the what I call quantum self, to the higher self. But that's only at the very last stage of our spiritual development. Most of us, I mean 99.999999999 percentile of us are not there yet. So it causes enormous confusion. We need the ego for the creative process. We need both the quantum and the ego. We need to build strong repertoire of knowledge before we can bring our creative ideas to manifestation, because creative ideas are just ideas of values that have no physical representation as of yet. We have to give it representation using the repertoire of language, mathematics if necessary, or other skills like skills of painting or skills of architecture or whatever have you. Without those skills, we cannot manifest our ideas, and therefore we need both. We need the ego, strong ego, in fact, and we need the quantum self. We need both.
Yeah. So what's this? We talked a lot. We've talked about changing myself. We talk about thinking in the quantum level. We've talked about the materialistic science. We've talked about what it's like to be the quantum activist, and we've already started to talk about the stages of getting to that level. You also talk about in some of your writings the self-aware universe,
right?
And that is, I'm sure that's part of the steps to become.
Yeah. The recognizing that the universe is self-aware through us is a very, very important recognition. This one recognition can greatly contribute to help us grow, because this idea that God is independent of us, or this non-locality, non-local consciousness, or non-local universe is separate from us. that causes a lot of problem. No, it acts through us. So we really, this is where we have to recognize that we are co-creator of the world, and therefore we have responsibility. Of course, the more awake I am, the more responsibility I can handle. I'm not suggesting that if we are not so awakened, like most of us, we take a lot of responsibility. I'm not suggesting that, but at least if we become creators, if we start creating, creative person, then we take responsibility for what we create. If that much we can do, then already the world will change. If scientists in Iran recognize that creating an atomic bomb right now in this stage of affair, when there is no need for a power struggle with another power, is just completely a wastage and put the world only in jeopardy, because that is the site of, the whole Muslim world is the site of terrorism, and therefore it opens the capacity of terrorists to get hold of an atomic bomb. If the scientists recognize this and not refuse to work on atomic bomb, developing atomic bomb, how nice it would be for the rest of the world. This is the kind of taking responsibility for your action that has to come in our awareness in general, in all humanity. Then we can grow together and keep ourselves safe at the same time.
Yeah, and be accountable for ourselves.
Absolutely.
So one of the things that comes up to my mind is, and I have a friend she's a holistic medical doctor, and she was explaining to me one day about cancer. My mother passed away of cancer, and so she explained cancer is a bunch of cells that are not communicating with each other. She said that's a basic level. And so I always relate that back to our unself-aware stuff in our universe and our world, is that the world is operating like a cancer. And I don't want to call everybody a cancer, but in some ways they're groups of energies not communicating with each other.
Yeah,
and so
this is a very good way of putting it. If our cells become selfish, completely self-indulgent, then they become cancerous, right? Because they are no longer working as an organ, developing a normal organ. They are developing abnormal heaps of individual, anything goes, a little bit like the libertarian Tea Party philosophy, isn't it? So if we become like that, if we forget the cohesion, the society, rest of us, then it is very chaotic for the society. It's very cancerous for the society. Yes, that's an extremely good analogy. I'll steal it, I think.
Yeah. Just I remembered that, and it stuck with me. And I thought, and on levels, because of the quantum level that we're talking about, we could really heal a lot of ailments within the body by thinking on a quantum level, and we probably would not be as sick, or have the sicknesses or the diseases that we have. On a quantum level. I think the Center of Noetic Sciences, they were talking about that. There was a group where you were talking about non-local signals and local signals and stuff like that, where they had a husband that was in a room, and there was no way that she could signal to him, and they saw a difference. And I don't remember the whole gist of the study, but just with the compassion or the love that he had, it changed himself inside. So, well, some other questions I have for you is that you had mentioned in one of your interviews, and I was that objects are possibilities. I think we've touched on this a little bit, but we look at the object as just tangible objects. And where are we when we look at an object like you and I? We're people, we're humans, but we're more than that. And then, or the computer sitting in front of me as an object. What do you mean by can you explain that quantum objects are possibilities?
Well, yes, this is a very, very important question. In the macro world, of course, it produces a lot of confusion. With the computer that is sitting right before me, and whenever I look, I'm finding it at the same place. How can it become a possibility object when I'm not looking? But the answer is crucial to understand. In quantum physics, it says that yes, objects are possibility objects, and for micro objects it's easy to see because micro objects have the capacity of spreading as possibility waves quite fast. So we'll never find the electron at the same place necessarily. Will not find the electron in the same place necessarily. We sometimes will find it in the same place, but most times we'll find it in different places. So that gives away the electron secret that it is a possibility object very, very easily. For a macro object, it's a little bit confusing because macro objects appear at the same place whenever we look. The answer to that is given in quantum physics. Quantum mathematics shows that when you are considering a massive object, the possibility waves, they do spread, which is the characteristic of waves. Like if you throw a pebble in the water creating waves, you'll see that the water waves are spreading, making bigger and bigger crests. This is true of quantum waves as well, for all objects' waves. But the waves for a macro object spread so slowly that to give you an idea, the center of mass of a tabletop computer spreads maybe like 10 to the minus 16 centimeters in the time that you are in between your lookings. So 10 to the minus 16 centimeters, no eye is capable of measuring that kind of distance, but we can measure it, and it has been measured with laser instruments today. So there is no doubt that even the desktop computer is actually moving a little bit through quantum movement, but not enough for us to discern it, and therefore we get confused. Therefore we get confused that the macro world is Newtonian, is determined, is forever there, outside of us. But in truth, in between our looking, it is becoming possibility. It is an ideal object, not really manifest object, but you have to use your intelligence to see it. Now, Robert Oppenheimer said something very significant. Science is uncommon sense. Common sense sometimes deceives us. We have to go beyond, little bit beyond common sense sometimes to be able to grasp the science.
Yeah, there's a kid out there right now. He's what is his name? Jacob Barnett, I think his name is. He's teaching we have to stop thinking or stop learning and think with creative ways. And he's actually doing the quantum physics. At age 11, I think he's already in college, learning physics and quantum physics. He's autistic, I believe, and just thinks on a different level. And that brings me to another question: the autistic kids that are coming forward, they're learning at such a rate, and it's almost like I was working with an autistic child on in my healing business. It almost seemed like he was there in his body, but he wasn't. He was way out where, on a consciousness level, I wasn't. And almost like he at some point where he just almost couldn't handle this world. And so what do you think that these children are going on, like somebody like a Jacob Barnett? How are they processing so fast and bringing such information?
That's the thing, that when other senses don't operate, then we become more capable of handling much of the inner world in a very different way. Autistic are those people, of course, who are impaired in some of the normal functioning in the external world. So we think that, they're just, not capable of anything. But that is completely untrue because many of them retain the capacity of processing the internal, and therefore their heightened awareness of all these intuitive domains of reality that come to them. And therefore they are much more aware of what is going on in their unconscious. So no wonder they can learn things very fast, and because they process through the quantum processing. That is very, very true. Because they're detached from the external. They don't have the capacity. They lose some and they gain some. So we have to take proper cognizance of that. That being autistic does not mean that you are completely disabled. Autistic and disabled are not the same vocabulary.
Yeah, I have what the world would call a disability called dyslexia, and I have never thought of it as a disability. I thought it was
No.
just I saw the world different.
Right, exactly. One cognitive capacity is lacking, but that liberates other cognitive capacities. So,
Absolutely.
there are many ways of knowing. Our cognition is not just limited to just that normal way. We forget that sometimes. In fact, creative people themselves, all of them, you can say, the capacity for quantum thinking, you may think of it as slightly special capacity, a non-normal capacity, because it comes more naturally to some people, and for some people it just doesn't because of their conditioning, too much normality. So this is why Freud, when he theorized about creativity, he thought creative people are just the flip side of neurosis, and that's not completely wrong, because creative people do have the capacity of processing the unconscious just as the neurotic people do, except that creative people has a more clear unconscious geared to studying the new, whereas the neurotic people are stuck in the suppressed material, and therefore they never go beyond the conventional.
Right, and the neurotic people, that's why they get caught up and have anxieties and
right.
And the mental mind, because they're so stuck in the idea of what their box is that they miss.
Right. Too much identified with their box.
Yeah, it's so interesting because when we really, what I really love about the work that is happening and the work that you're doing and many others are out there doing is we're really trying to bring this science and spirituality together as opposed to working against each other. And I'm sure it happened sometime in the age of what they considered the age of enlightenment back in the 16 or 1700s, but where science and religion started moving away from each other as opposed to working with each other. And
well, at least there was a truce at those times. So they were moving away from each other, but at least they were friendly. But now the situation has developed that they are hostile to each other, and this cannot stand. This hostility that we see today is making us inoperative. We cannot operate. We just cannot operate. It's not just politics, but almost everywhere. We are losing our operating capacity. This cannot stand. The new quantum worldview, this is part of quantum activism, so I'm making a little bit of a point here. One of our goals is to infuse quantum activism into society with such strength that the integrative capacity of quantum physics will be seen by our politicians and by our business leaders, because we have something very grave to say about all this, politics, economics, all these things, that if you integrate, it will liberate creativity in new and unforeseen ways that you have not done already. And this is why our problems are occurring. Our problems are problems of poverty of our creativity rather than anything else. We are unable to get out of the box, and that's what is responsible for our difficulties.
Yeah, there's so many things, but I really honestly, I think it's changing. Well, I don't think you can see it before our eyes. And you can tell because the people are really, they're having difficulty with it. It's like you mentioned one study that has been proven, seen over and demonstrated 2,000 times. And I know in science, or however many times you had talked about, and I know in science that it takes many people to do the same test over a controlled study over and over and over again until we finally say, yep, this is it.
Right.
And so what I find very interesting is that, this is, quantum physics has been around for, a while, but you were seeing the shift, but it's just taking a very long time. People are very resistant to it, and when you explain, I said to one person that you can explain God with science, and they didn't. That just totally foreign with it.
Yeah, because you have developed some of these dictums to save religion from science, from classical science, from Newtonian science. I cannot blame them because when you are cornered, then you tend to become conservative. So we have developed adages like, religion is beyond science and all this. Transpersonal psychologists do the same thing. Transpersonal aspects of ourselves is beyond science. And so, we are sacrosanct in both ways about our beliefs. So this is one belief that separates, and scientists' belief, of course, is that everything is matter. All this is hocus pocus. That also separates. So you are stuck between rock and a hard place, two separate belief systems that don't mix. This is why it's very imperative that we look at quantum physics without prejudice and see that quantum physics from the get-go is bringing back the concept of two-level reality, which is really the basic thing. Transcendent immanent is built into quantum physics. And therefore, quantum physics and spiritual traditions and this deep psychology, they're talking about the same thing. Unconscious and the conscious are the same thing as quantum unmanifest and manifest.
Yeah.
If we realize this, then immediately the road to integration is very, very clear.
Yeah. Hey, Dr. Goswami, we have another caller, so I'm going to bring them on the line really quick. Just 1 second. Hello, caller.
Hi, Jeremy. It's Justin. This is Justin.
Hey, how are you?
Hi, Justin.
Good. How are you?
Good.
How are you,
good.
Dr. Goswami?
Hi.
I have two questions, actually. One is, why is quantum physics not more widely known? I personally didn't hear too much about it until I met Jeremy, and I know it's being taught in schools, but it's basically a newer kind of science. Is that why it's not more widely taught?
Yeah, it is a very sad thing that we do it in physics much more than we do it in other sciences. For example, if you go to college, it's never high school never teaches much of quantum physics anyway. But if you go to college, chemists at least start talking about quantum physics right away. But physics, there is a prejudice that you have to go through first classical physics, Newtonian physics, and then only in your fourth year you learn quantum physics. This is such a bad system that we have developed. And we also have developed the idea that people are stupid. And that is such a wrong idea, shortchanging our students because, of course, there are students who don't grasp things very well because of their shortcomings of their childhood education. That is true, but that does not mean that students are stupid. Even students who cannot read and write, they're very clever, actually, if you look at them and talk to them seriously. So people can learn quantum very, very easily. In fact, my experience is that quantum physics is better acceptable, better learned, easily grasped by middle-aged housewives who have never looked at physics before than learned physicists, because the learned physicists have more prejudice to overcome than the housewife divorced middle-aged who never become exposed to quantum physics. So imagine the import of all these things. Imagine how quickly change would come if we could change our educational system so that even in high school, even in elementary school, we introduce the basic quantum concepts.
Absolutely. You actually just answered my second question. My second question was going to be, how can we use this new way of thinking in quantum physics to do and accomplish more good in the world, and that would be to educate more.
Yeah, one aspect is educate, but there are several other aspects too. For example, I mentioned economics a while ago. There are deep economic implications of the new science. If we introduce, for example, vital energies, mental meanings, even spiritual values like happiness as commodities of the economic arena, forget the adages like love, money cannot buy love, money cannot buy happiness. Instead, realize that happiness can be bought by money, and happiness can be bought by love, can be bought by money, not in the sense of prostitution. I'm not talking about that. That's just sex. No, love. Because there are people who are so capable of loving. If you go into their proximity, you feel love. There are people who are so centered in happiness. Just sitting in their proximity, you become happy. I have experienced such people. So there's no reason why we cannot manufacture such people en masse, and then we can make them the subject of economic commodity. And that changes our economics so much, because after you have done that for a while, you see you'll want to become a producer of happiness rather than only a consumer of happiness. And that's how societies can change. So not only education, we have to change the patterns of healing, we have to change the patterns of economy, we have to change the patterns of politics, we have to change the patterns of spirituality and religion. All this simultaneously together. It's a long way, but my hope for the future is enormously enhanced when I talk to people like you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much,
you,
Dr. Goswami. You answered all my questions perfectly. Thank you so much.
Thank
you. Wow, we got some good callers. Thank you, Dr. Goswami. Can we talk about, we got a few more minutes of the show, about your current projects. I mean, I know is the Quantum Activism, is that your last book, or is I thought that you have another one?
That's the last one, although there are some reissues of Quantum Doctor was reissued recently, and God is Not Dead also. But yeah, okay. I have a recent project is Quantum Creativity. I did publish a book in 1999, but that was a very incomplete book. My first, and creativity is a very complex subject. So a reissue of it, not quite a reissue, it's almost like a new book on creativity that's going to come up soon. Hay House is publishing it.
Okay.
And then, of course, I want to publish this economics of consciousness. So that is my passionate project right now.
Wow, very cool. And then you guys, for you out there, Dr. Goswami's website, and it's going to be listed in the archives here as well. It's amitgoswami.org, and you can actually take, which I was actually rather excited about. I can't remember where I saw it in here. You can take, I think, a correspondence course from you, if I saw that correct.
Yeah. Yes, we are developing more courses, but we have the basic quantum as the first of a series. And yes, you are very right, Jeremy. Thanks for mentioning it. We are giving online courses which are a doorway to enter quantum activism. Yes. Very
cool. So, I mean, if you guys want to check out his website, it's definitely worth. He's got stuff on his papers and other stuff. And for those of you that don't know, in his bio, you check it out on his website. But he was the professor of theoretical sciences at Oregon State University. Am I getting that correct?
University of Oregon.
Okay.
In Eugene. That's the Eugene one, right?
In Eugene. And so, while we're wrapping up here, is there anything that you would like to talk about prior to us wrapping up the show that maybe we didn't talk about?
Well, I just want to remind people that remember, wherever you are, whichever life situation you're in, it's possible to be a quantum activist. Quantum activism, one of the things that we do, we recognize that middle class today is not defined by the old concept of American dream anymore. It's not just you do hard work and therefore you should become rich and comfortable. It's not just that. If you do hard work and then you earn the right to process meaning. The American dream is about the capacity of the ability of choosing to do meaningful tasks. That right is the right of every advanced economic country's people. And we have earned this. We now have 200 years of democracy. We have 200 years of capitalism. We have earned our right to do meaningful enterprises now. We don't have to be stuck with doing assembly line work. And many, many Americans are looking for meaningful jobs. I know it, because that's part of the problem today of joblessness, that people are not satisfied with doing just flipping hamburgers in a hamburger joint. So therefore, please look at the quantum worldview, look at how you can do it, how you can manifest meaningful jobs for yourself, how you can integrate the livelihood, your livelihood with your life, because that is absolutely crucial for becoming a quantum activist. We don't transform because our 8 hours a day is wasted in meaningless pursuits of things. If we can do meaningful pursuit all the time, we are already in the road to transform. And this is the final message I would like to leave you with.
Thank you, Dr. Goswami. I really, really appreciate you coming on the show, and I know that the listeners appreciate it, and thank you very much for doing your work. And have a blessed day.
Thank you, Jeremy.